Yeah. So interesting enough, this is my topic, and you and I have discussed this before, not at length, but at a, maybe that should be a topic. And that is this concept of stereotypes.
Mm.
And I know I feel you're anti-stereotype.
No, I'm actually not, because I think they're inherent. Like, I don't think there's anything we can do about them. What I am for is people being aware of them.
Okay.
And I feel like people want to just, like, I know people in my own life who are like, stereotypes are bad, or prejudgment or whatever. And it's like, you're a fucking human being. You're going to have judgment amongst people. And again, it kind of goes back to that what we were just talking about a second ago of like, it's okay to change your mind, but you're going to have an initial response to someone or something. And there are reasons for stereotypes.
Yes,
There are reasons for them. And it doesn't mean you have to like them or agree with them. But I remember having this argument with someone a few years ago. And I'll admit, I could be super wrong about this, but I was like, as a single woman living in New York City, if I am walking down the street and there is, or it doesn't even matter what city it is, if I'm walking down the street and two guys are walking towards me and I'm alone and they're both in suits, I'm probably not as concerned as if I see two guys, and I don't give a fuck what color they are. I don't care if they're white guys, black guys, Asian guys, but if men are walking towards me and they have their pants around their ass and they're drinking beer and like being vulgar, I am going to be on much more high alert versus the two men in suits who are, say they're relatively all the same age and race. And it's just because I am going to stereotype that those two men in suits don't give a fuck about me, right, that they are doing whatever they're doing. And I also think people forget a part of it is like your own lived experience and your history with certain people are going to impact if you see someone that reflects or looks like someone that maybe you've had an altercation with, that's where trauma response comes from.
Yep. And I am notorious for saying I know how this is going to go because I've had this experience before with someone similar to you.
Right. And it's not necessarily fair. It's not necessarily fair. It's just a reality. But I will say what I am absolutely against, and this is where I know that it's maybe they're in conflict, but what I am absolutely against is policies around stereotypes, right? So like here in New York, when Giuliani was mayor and everybody loved him, it was because he had the broken windows policy.
Right.
So shit like that, where it clearly impacts poor people and impacts a certain group, I am absolutely against. The problem with it is based on statistics, and I always take statistics with a grain of salt because they can be skewed. Anyone can, I shouldn't say anyone, but numbers can be manipulated, unfortunately, in terms of what's shared, how it's shared. And according to what New York, put in the universe, was those policies worked.
Right. You and I have had a conversation about that broken window policy.
Yeah. And that's where I have an issue with leveraging stereotypes.
Right. But so my thought was stereotypes exist for a reason.
Yes. Right? Yes.
And I don't think they're always bad. Like, I do not think it's great to immediately judge someone based on a stereotype because we can often be surprised by individuals.
100%. You know what one of my favorite things on Twitter is I love, and I know this is so ridiculous, or at least when I used to go on Twitter, there was a guy on Twitter and I thought he was so great because he looked like the stereotypical white hillbilly. He wore this trucker hat. He had a very thick Southern accent. And he'd put these videos out that were super woke and liberal and anti-Trump.
Yeah.
And they were brilliant because he was breaking the stereotype Like I love those people that challenge stereotypes. Like I love that. I love when you see someone who looks like a gangster or whatever, and they actually can whip out, like business talk, or, they're a genius at numbers, or like whatever it is. I love when people are like, fuck you and your stereotype.
Yeah, but you know what is interesting is you just made me really think of this, and I was thinking of it earlier, and now it's back, and that is, old white male is a stereotype,
Yeah.
right? But we don't attribute it to a stereotype. But it's, to me, a stereotype is a representation of a package, right?
Yeah.
And just because you are, and I'm going to use you specifically as an example, just because you are I know you said you are a mixed race, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you, appearance wise, some people would mistake you for a Black woman, right? From a distance, looking at you, a tall Black woman. And, and I don't think that falls into a general stereotype just based on that alone, correct? Or does it?
I don't know, because I think it depends. I think that if you think about the stereotype that was placed on Black women for a long time, angry, I feel like angry Black woman is always at the forefront. Then you had for a long time welfare queen. When you hear the term welfare queen, you think of a Black woman.
Yes, but and forgive me. So we're going to have a very honest conversation here. And this is my learning curve.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those were not your body type. Because for me, a stereotype, like people narrow it down to a look. I mean, some people even narrow it down to a haircut. You know what I mean?
No, I think that that's fair, but I still think, I guess, yes, like the image that comes to mind, right? It's like when you said white trash earlier, right? It's like people have a very distinct, and it could change a little depending on what, but for the most part, you're going to have a specific type that comes to mind. So yes, I probably don't fit what people think of as a welfare queen.
Right.
Right. But could I be an angry Black woman? I mean, angry Black woman that's all women.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah. And
well, and that's the thing about stereotypes too, is yes, they're like Americans are a stereotype in other countries, right?
100%.
Regardless of your color or your body type or your gender, like that's the American stereotype.
The American, 100%. And
then within that, there's the Americans see our stereotypes. Well, that's the same thing with the French, right? Like there's a French stereotype, there's an Italian stereotype. And I think I am aware of my compartmentalizing of stereotypes, right? I do it often, but at least I'm aware of it. That's a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
But they do exist.
100% they exist. And in a way they exist to protect us, right? It's like there is a reason why our brains operate that way. It's like, back when we were still hunter-gatherers and we're out there and you see a wild pack of wolves, you're not going to assume like, oh, they could be friendly wolves. No, it's like, get the fuck out of there. They are going to eat your ass. Like, no. Or you see people that are from a different clan, because we were in clans back then.
Right.
I mean, so yeah, it's like, but again, I think that we have clearly evolved since then. Our brains have evolved since then. And people are very fucking complex. And I feel like stereotyping is just an easy, lazy fucking way to put people in a box without really understanding more of who they are, how they think. And that's why you do have people who voted for Obama in 2004 and 2008, or 2008 and 2012, 2008 and 12, and then turned around and voted for Trump in 2016. Right? I mean, that was a big group of people.
But I mean, what is that? What does that have to do with the stereotype?
Because I think it's easy to stereotype, like, oh, if you voted for Trump, then you're this racist, or you're,
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
but it's like, I mean, would you say that someone who voted for a black man to be president is racist?
Yeah. Wait,
I mean,
you got mad. He's not black, remember? He's
I
mixed race.
mean,
We
he
have
is mixed
You
race.
got
Yeah,
mad at me for calling him a black man once, Frida. I
yeah,
have it on tape.
it's true. It's 100% true. But it's easy. I always, yes, I fall to black man, but yes,
Because
he
he
is.
is partially a black man. And I
The world
love
sees
that
him as a black man. The world sees him as a black man.
yeah, I see him as, well, I see him as a black man, but I also see him as a president that I've missed.
God.
But what's interesting though is I wonder if, is there a way around it, right? Like we all see and recognize stereotypes, and you and I can agree that sometimes they're necessary, like
Yeah.
in the sense of, if I see something coming towards me that possibly falls into a stereotype, and that includes an old white man, because I don't want to get into a conversation with certain old white men, then I'm ready. I'm prepped. I'm ready to go. I know how to avoid. I might cross the street like we talked about. Maybe I sit in a different chair. And that is all true. But then I also have to remind myself, maybe I'm wrong, right? Maybe
100%. And it's like, I was having this conversation with someone recently where, and I'm very guilty of this, where I very much stereotype Midwest white people, like, or Southerners, really Southerners.
yeah,
And
I
it's
hear you.
not fair. It's not a fair judgment, assessment. I recognize it, but there is a certain fear. I guess it comes from a place of fear that, yeah, like, I don't want to go fucking hang out in Alabama. Like, I just don't. The thought of getting lost or getting, that terrifies me because of the what I have created in my mind.
Yeah.
And having watched Mississippi burning, and now granted, I know those were 50, 60 years ago, but the remnants of that are still there.
There's people that still
And
believe those things, Freedom.
they totally do.
That's why we're stuck with people that like Trump.
Exactly. And I got into this debate about, the people who stormed the Capitol. And I'm like, I will say those people, like, I don't think any one of those people that went to the Capitol and wanted to hang Mike Pence and wanted to kill Pelosi, and God knows what they would have done to AOC or anyone from the squad if they had got their hands on them. Those are a dangerous group of people, and the rhetoric actually allows them, and Trump has amplified their okayness in being racist. And I think it's really easy for people to be like, well, poor white people are the majority of the United States, right? Like, they are the majority. And yet all these policies for equity and inclusion are leaving them out. And now they don't feel like they count. And it's not their fault. They didn't own slaves. They didn't. And it's like, they didn't, but they also had the grandparents that could own homes and pass on, wealth if they had wanted to or didn't want to, but they always had the access or availability to get a leg up in the world for a really long fucking time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that it makes all poor white people bad. And I totally actually am empathetic to the fact that, yeah, maybe because of these DEI initiatives that they're trying to open it up to more brown and black people having access. But I'm not going to be okay with, like, well, then that makes it okay for you to vote for Trump. And that makes it okay that you are going to demean other groups of people. And the argument was, well, it's the 1%, right? The people that have all the wealth at the top create all this friction between everyone down here, because if we all join forces, then we would take them down.
Okay.
But those stereotypes allow us to stay at conflict, right? So the poor white people can go, oh, that brown woman or that black woman or that Asian man got that job because of that, and therefore I'm not getting it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my family did not make money off of the slave trade. I don't have any.
Actually, that would be hard to prove. Your family might have. I mean, a lot, but okay, this could easily be an exhausting conversation in the sense that I agree with you. I get what you're saying. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That, and I actually have never thought about diversity, equity, and inclusion not including white people, oddly enough.
But it doesn't.
But I maybe not in the sentence and the thought process, but I don't know. I'm way back here in the we're all just human. I get that we all have differences. I haven't quite caught up to that, right? And I kind of think, and a fine example of that is Barack Obama. he didn't become president and then say, I'm only going to help Black and brown people.
Of course not.
So that's why I'm like, diversity, equity, and inclusion doesn't automatically eliminate poor white people.
What's crazy though, when you think about that, it's like, but who did do that? It was the Trump administration.
Yeah, agreed.
They totally did. And it's like, even when COVID hit, right? And Jared Kushner was, I don't know if he got caught saying it or he just blatantly said it, was like, oh, New York, basically like, fuck New York. They didn't vote for Trump. Like, let them die. Like, let them fucking die. And what killed me about it is it's like, there are still people who voted for Trump here. Yeah. I mean, there are still.
Hello, Giuliani.
Yeah.
Follows him around sniffing his ass crack.
Fucking Trump was born here. He's from New York.
Yeah.
He grew up in Queens and like in the borough I live in, like he is from here.
Yeah. But that's why I'm like, I want to get to that point where I'm like, I don't want to worry that a Black or brown person might be getting the job instead of me, because I also believe that and this is the religious side of me coming out, I will admit it.
Okay.
I believe I will get what I should be getting because I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And I'm like, and that doesn't mean I have to begrudge someone else for getting what they're supposed to be getting. Right.
I agree. And, it's a very slippery slope. And it's a very gray area, because it's like, you don't want people getting jobs that don't deserve them just to check a fucking box. Like, that's not okay either, right? If you have two people who have the same,
if their qualifications are drastically different, I would agree. And you're a brain surgeon, I totally agree with you. But if the job is checking the water meter,
well, I guess it depends on what the job is too, right? Like, if your job is impacting others, like a friend of mine's husband got a job recently, and we were reading the job description and it was like, how did he get this job?
Maybe he's the only one that applied.
Maybe.
A lot of people are not applying for jobs, but I'm like, I don't know. In looking for a job, that's a whole other, like craziness.
I was shocked, honestly.
I'll cut that out, by the way, because I mentioned their name specifically, so I'll cut this part out. But yeah, I actually didn't mind, because I was like, all right, well, that's one no. Don't you have to get like 100 no's before you get to a yes?